Welcome to App Stories, a weekly exploration of the world of apps. Today's show is brought to you by Pingdom, Zapier, and Direct Mail. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is my co-host, Federico Viticci. Hey, Federico.
Hey, John. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. You know, it's been another kind of busy week here at MacStories, and we have so much to talk about. But, you know, everybody assumed that when you published your review of iOS and iPadOS 13, that we were kind of done. But, you know, we always have surprises at MacStories, and you're kind of a master of surprises. So you had a little something extra up your sleeve this year. Why don't you explain to people what that is? Because I think it's pretty neat and something that a lot of listeners of this show would be interested in.
Yeah, so I kept this one a secret from a lot of people for a long time. It's a project we've been working on since July. I was on vacation when I started planning the whole thing. So we launched a new product. It's called MacStories Shortcuts Icons. And it's right there in the name. It's a set of 300 icons, custom icons for shortcuts that you want to add to the home screen. So, you probably heard of the Shortcuts home screen as an idea before. We've talked about it here on the show. Other folks like David Sparks have talked about it. It would be, it's the idea of, in the Shortcuts app, you can add your most used shortcuts as launchers to the home screen, both on the iPhone and the iPad. And a few months ago, I had the idea. In iOS 13 and iPadOS 13, you can choose a custom icon for your home screen shortcuts from the Files app. And the Files app allows you to load PNG files and different file formats. It's more reliable than photos from that point of view. And so I thought, wouldn't it be fun if MacStories, MacStories is the place where people go to read about shortcuts and to download shortcuts from the MacStories archive. Wouldn't it be nice if MacStories also provided those users with customization options, with theming options to make their home screens unique? And so my thought was, we're going to make an icon set. We're going to release it as a MacStories product. And we're going to just go wild and build 300 icons, these custom glyphs, into a single download. And so MacStories Shortcuts Icons, it's available today. It's $14.99 to get the full set. If you're a Club MacStories member, you can get it for $9.99. So if you're a MacStories member, you can go to your downloads dashboard at macstories.memberful.com. Your downloads area, you will find the promo code. Otherwise, you can just go to macstories.net/pixel/shortcuts, and you will find the icons there. And I should mention that MacStories Pixel, also launched this week, is our new sort of design brand of the site. The idea would be that in the future, we're going to have more design products. It's also something that I've been meaning to do for a long time. Things like wallpapers or, icons or, all kinds of visual things that we want to do in the future. But for now, our first product is the Shortcuts Icons. And it's been really fun to work on this. Sylvia, she's been working on these icons. She's designed them all. She's been amazing. And, her talent and passion for designing these little glyphs with such precision and care is just incredible. And it's fun because it's a product that I use myself. I'm the first user of the Shortcuts Icons. And I've been, so my breaks over the past few weeks, whether I was working on the review or I was working on this launch, I've been taking breaks not with video games or with music or with reading books, but with customizing my home screen. It's just so fun to use all these icons and come up. And I should mention that what makes the icons unique is that they're going to keep the original color of your shortcuts. So you've probably seen custom icons before, but they always override the original color of your shortcut. So if your shortcut is red and you add a custom icon with another icon set, the icon becomes black or something. But these ones, they keep the original color of your shortcut. So the same color that you see in the Shortcuts app, you will see for the launcher with the custom icon on the home screen. It's really it's a lovely detail, and it's been made possible by 13.1, which added this specific feature.
Yeah, it's really neat, and I've been diving into these too. I haven't had them as long as you have, obviously, but I think you probably shared them with me to begin with. As Sylvia was approaching 200, and 200 was I think going to be the original count, but she just kept going.
No, I shared it with you at 150.
Oh, wow. And she just kept going past 200. And then, as I saw the first 150, I started having ideas about, well, I could use this cliff and maybe that one. And she kept working on different ones that I had suggested, and you had been going to different places to get inspiration. And what's neat about them is they all have they all look very cohesive and uniform in the sense that they all hang together really well. And the detail is just fantastic. And I love them. I think the very first one I used was the currency conversion one, because I was doing the PCalc review on the site, and I wanted to recreate one of your shortcuts for converting euros to dollars and back and forth. And so I used that and put it on the home screen in a nice green color, looking like money, and at least US money. And it was really cool. And so I'm looking forward. I'm not as far along as you are in redesigning my home screens, but I definitely have a handful that I feel like will be home screen ones, especially on my iPad. And then I think most of them might live on like a secondary screen. Haven't quite figured that out yet, but I'm looking forward to figuring it out.
Yeah, and it's been a fun process, if only because the ideas for the icons mostly came from me, and I've sort of designed this product for myself, for people like me. I've been going through the entire list of shortcuts in the MacStories archive. So all my shortcuts are basically represented in this icon set. But I've also gone through the websites of, David Sparks and Matthew Cassinelli and Rosemary Orchard, or Reddit and other communities, and even the Apple Gallery, to see what is a popular shortcut that is not represented well enough by an icon on the home screen. Because Apple does have some built-in glyphs in the Shortcuts app, but they're mostly, the mainstream in the sense that they cover the basics. They don't really go too specific. And so we have an entire collection of icons for the clipboard, and these ones I love, time tracking icons.
Right, right.
I have a bunch on my home screen, like 5 of them, or 6 actually, in multiple color variations. There's music, there's podcasts, there's, Shortcuts has now new HomeKit and AirPlay actions. And in fact, we have TVs, and we have speakers, and we have HomePods. There's a lot of stuff. And it's you can look at the full preview on the site. It's going to be linked in the show notes, and you're going to see just the raw amount of all these glyphs that she designed is really remarkable. And I'm planning to do, once I'm done with this customization process, I plan to do a story on the website about here's what my home screen looks like now. It's still very much in flux at this point, but I want to share what I will end up with, because it's been a fascinating process, if only to realize what are the shortcuts that I use the most, and what is something that could be a shortcut but I haven't created yet. And so in a way, customizing my home screen and rethinking my home screen also helped me come up with more shortcut ideas, which has been a real fun and creative process.
This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Pingdom. While you've been listening to this podcast, would you know if your website had gone down? Would you know if customers couldn't click that Buy Now button or access your content? You might stumble across the problem by luck, or an unhappy customer might get in contact with you eventually, but that's no good. What you need is a system. You need something that'll tell you that everything's running smoothly on your site, and more importantly, when it's not. What you need is Pingdom. Pingdom will let you know the moment your site goes down in whatever way is best for you. They're smart too. They'll get you the information needed to solve the issue, sent to whomever needs it, whether that's one person or your entire team. Pingdom is dedicated to making the web faster and more reliable. They use more than 70 global test servers that emulate visits to your website, checking its availability as often as every single minute. All Pingdom needs is your URL, and they take care of the rest. Don't risk being the last to know that something's wrong with your site and that it's broken. Start monitoring your site today. Go to pingdom.com/signup right now for a 14-day free trial with no credit card required. And then when you decide to sign up, just use the code AppStories at checkout to get an awesome 30% off your very first invoice. Again, that URL for the 14-day free trial is pingdom.com/signup, and the code AppStories for when you sign up and want 30% off your first invoice. Our thanks to Pingdom for their support of the show. Federico, I think we ought to get to our topic. We're going to talk about Apple Arcade today. And a couple of episodes ago, I guess it was 129, we talked about the apps from the Apple event back, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago now. It feels like forever ago, frankly, but it really isn't that long ago. But we want to talk about Apple Arcade more specifically because since we did that episode, it actually came out. And to everyone's surprise, it came out a little early, at least for people who were running the beta. It just showed up. It was supposed to come out on, I think it was, Thursday the 19th, right? And it came out maybe the Tuesday before.
It just showed up.
It just showed up one morning, right? And people started tweeting, hey, I can see Arcade. Because before that, the Arcade tab was there, but all that was there was like an email sign up to get alerted when it came out and some videos.
Do you remember what we were doing when it showed up?
Oh, we were podcasting, weren't we?
Yes.
And we stopped cold in the middle and almost stopped recording for good because we were started to download games and talk about the games. Because one of the things coming out of that event was Apple did not do a very good job at the fall event talking about Apple Arcade and showing the breadth and the depth of what was going to be available. They did a much better job. I don't know, it was like a day or two later when they did kind of a montage clips video of a bunch of the games that were going to be in the service. But then when it dropped, it was even better than what was in the clips video because all of a sudden there were roughly, I think the first day, maybe 50 to 60 games that showed up. And it was just overwhelming because there are so many games and the quality level of really all these games is very high. And they cover a breadth of different genres and types of games that I really think is going to appeal to a very broad audience from, younger kids on up to people who are more into, whether you're into puzzle games or action games or RPGs or kind of retro games, whatever it is, there's something there for everybody. And I know you and I have been busy. We haven't had a ton of time to play with these yet, but we have dived in a little bit and want to talk about what our favorites are. But is there anything else about the event and kind of what maybe Apple Arcade as software, as the tab in the App Store is like, or anything like that you want to talk about, Federico?
I think it'll be interesting to see what Apple will do in terms of promoting individual games out of Apple Arcade and into other sections of the App Store, because I wonder if Apple can really continue to have this separation between the App Store and Apple Arcade. Like I look, for example, at a new feature that launched in 13.1 on the App Store, and that would be suggestions in search results. So in iOS 13.1, if you open the search page, you will see the search bar at the top and Discover in the middle. Discover will be popular searches right now. But then down below, in 13.1, you will notice suggested. And those are suggestions for apps that you can find on the App Store that are suggested to you based on multiple criteria. So your search history, your app purchase habits, your App Store usage, your previous App Store queries. And Apple is suggesting these apps to you, even though they're not necessarily popular, but they're tailored to you. And I wonder how long until this section becomes, and I don't want to say an advertisement, but a way for Apple to say, oh, we think this game you might like, and this game is all available in Apple Arcade. So sort of like another way to push the subscription to Apple Arcade.
Right.
And I also wonder if, right now you can go to the main tab, the games one in the App Store. And sure enough, you will not find Apple Arcade content in there. I wonder how long this will last.
Yeah, it's not clear. There's so much about Apple Arcade that really wasn't disclosed in advance.
Well, actually, let me rephrase. There is a section at the bottom, almost at the very end, that says new Apple Arcade games. So there's already something in there.
Oh, I see that. All right, that's interesting. Yeah, not a lot was disclosed in advance about how Apple Arcade was going to be organized. It's not clear. It's never been spoken about, at least publicly, what the financial deals are with the game developers. From the rumors that you and I have heard, it sounds like Apple is financing the development of these games upfront and making upfront payments to get them in arcade. And they're exclusive, but only to a degree, because there's games like Sayonara Wild Hearts, which is exclusive to Apple Arcade, but it's also on the Switch. The exclusive moniker, I guess, meaning really that it's not on Android, I think, is really it's not on another mobile platform. Although, I would call the Switch a mobile platform, but I guess it doesn't count since it's not a cell phone. But in any event, that's not clear. It's not clear whether games will roll out of arcade at some point once that exclusivity ends. Will they, at some point, maybe you'll find Sayonara Wild Hearts on the regular game tab for $10? Maybe. I don't know. That sort of thing has not been talked about at all by Apple. And it'll be interesting to see what happens. The arcade tab itself in the App Store is a little different than anything else that we've seen in the App Store so far, and it seems as though it's still evolving fairly quickly. There are very large spotlights and highlights of particular games in it, even bigger than you find in the regular tabs of the App Store. There are also categories and collections of games. There's a little bit of editorial content that seems to it disappeared one day this week when I was looking at it. I couldn't find it. Yeah, it did. I think on like Tuesday or Wednesday, it just disappeared. And then it was back the next morning. So there's maybe 5 or 6 like hint guides that have been published, but not any kind of behind the scenes or developer spotlights or newsy type articles like you find in the Today tab. And then at the very bottom, there is a See All Games button that is really the only way to find some of the games, or at least easily find some of the games, because that main tab doesn't really show that many games to begin with. And I think at this point, it's not at the 100 plus that Apple originally promised. They said that at least at the fall event, they said that'll be coming in the next few weeks. And they do seem to be, since it went live, they've been adding new games. And last I checked, it was somewhere around the mid 70s, I think.
And now you can at least see the release date of those games, like when they were added. I still think there should be a much better UI to see, sort of like a calendar view, even though Apple is probably never going to do this, but like it will be super helpful to say, show me all the games from September. And I think to an extent, Nintendo does a better job with this, with the eShop. Like they have an actual schedule for releasing games. And I know that it's different. The eShop is a marketplace and Apple Arcade is a subscription. And it just started, so it's probably we should cut Apple some slack and give them time to work on this stuff.
Right.
But right now it can be a little daunting to open Apple Arcade and see this avalanche of games. Like, what do I play right now? And so as a result, what I've done is I just downloaded everything that seemed remotely interesting, and I've sort of worked my way backwards, sort of trying to understand. Okay, what is this game? Do I care about it? Nope. And I delete the game and I move on to the next one.
Right.
Let me ask, before we talk about the games, let me ask you, John, any thoughts on game controllers and game controller support?
Yeah, I did a big review of game controller support earlier this summer on MacStories, and a couple of things that are worth mentioning. One is that I discovered actually today through an article in TechCrunch that there is multiple controller support now on iOS. Now, this is not an arcade exclusive thing, because actually the reporter at TechCrunch discovered a game that is just in the regular App Store that I am pretty certain was not there when I tested my game controllers. Now, I don't recall if I tried to connect 2 DualShocks at once, but I definitely tried to connect a DualShock and an Xbox controller at the same time and wasn't able to get them both connected at the same time back then. Could have been a technical issue, but as far as I can tell, that's a relatively new thing. Now, it's interesting. It's kind of that is possible, but I don't think there are very many games that support that. None in Apple Arcade that I've come across yet. And as this TechCrunch article pointed out, there was only one game that did that. The other thing worth noting is that there is actually support for a controller that is not official, which is the 8-bit do SN30 Pro Plus, Pro Plus, which doesn't really roll off the tongue that well. But I only mention it because I meant put it in the article, and it turns out that the only way to get that to work, first of all, you have to have it connected via USB-C cable. It only works tethered. And it works really well, though. The only thing is that a lot of these, when you buy them, need a firmware update to get that to work. I updated the firmware when I first got it. You can go to 8-bit do's support pages. There's a Mac app, and you can update the firmware on your controller. And once you do that, it works. But I did get a few questions from readers about how come theirs wasn't working, and I'm pretty sure that that's what the issue was. So that's just kind of an update on controller support. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Zapier. Growing a business is hard, especially when you're spending hours a day moving data around from emails to spreadsheets and to wherever else. Wouldn't it be easier if all these things worked together seamlessly without you having to lift a finger? Of course they would. And that's exactly what Zapier is for. Zapier is the easiest way to automate your work. It connects all of your business software and handles the work for you so you can focus on the things that are most important to your business. So, for example, if you work in sales, Zapier will let you instantly engage with leads and send the information to a CRM or spreadsheet, and then let you notify your team so they can act quickly on every single opportunity. But whatever your business is, you can build the exact solution that you need in just minutes without writing a line of code or asking a developer for help. And with the support of over 1,500 business applications, it's no wonder that more than 4.5 million people are saving 40 hours a month using Zapier. I think of Zapier as the glue that integrates and ties together all the things that normally wouldn't do that. At MacStories, for instance, we use it to automate our newsletter pipeline. When we get an email through Gmail from a reader, it goes into Trello, and then from there, it can go into our text editors. The data just moves through the system seamlessly, so we can worry about writing the newsletter, not where the data is. It's an amazing tool that lets you focus on exactly what you need to do. And I've got a terrific deal for you. Right now, through November, you can try Zapier for free by going to zapier.com/appstories. That's zapier.com/appstories for your free 14-day trial. Go there now and check it out. It'll save you so much time. Again, that URL for a 14-day free trial of Zapier is zapier.com/appstories. Our thanks to Zapier for their support of the show.
I think I'm gonna start playing Sayonara Wild Hearts with a controller on my iPad Pro. I was almost tempted to start playing on my iPhone last night.
Oh, it's a game you got to play on your iPad. I did last night, and it's fantastic that way.
Yeah, I resisted the temptation, and and I'm gonna play on the iPad. So why don't we talk about some of the games that we found that we've been playing?
Well, let's talk a little bit more about Sayonara Wild Hearts then, because that's
so you played that one.
I did, and I played it with a PS4 DualShock controller, and it's great. It's great that way. And what I've been doing so far is I have I think it's a Viazon iPad stand. I think it's one that you've got. It's the one that Jason Snell kind of talked us all into buying at some point about a year and a half ago. But I put my iPad Pro in that, connect the PS4 DualShock, and it's like having the world's biggest Nintendo Switch. I mean, it's this great, big, beautiful screen and great sound, and you can just sit at a table and play, and it's just a fantastic experience. And that game is, it's a hard, great game to describe because you're playing as this female character that has had her heart broken and is trying to put the pieces of her heart back together. And you're on skateboards and motorcycles and you're fighting people, and it's all done to like pop music. So it's kind of it's kind of an endless runner rhythm game to some degree, right? And it's very fast paced. You're kind of going through these courses, collecting hearts and various power-ups, and you go through each level and you get a score. You're either bronze, silver, or gold, and then you move on. And if you fail at some point during a level, it just kind of backs you up to a point just before you crashed and you start over. But I've really enjoyed it. I mean, the visuals are just amazing. It kind of almost reminded me of the game Tempest from the 80s, where you had these
That's very specific.
it is, but that was all vector art, and it was you had a controller that was just a knob, and you had to move around the edges of these geometric shapes to shoot at things coming at you. And this is similar in the sense that you're riding motorcycles and everything, but it's got a vector art feel to it, and you're going at these geometric shapes and paths that are really interesting from a visual standpoint. Plus, you've got this great pop music playing while you're doing it. So it's not like Tempest at all in the sense that they're very different games, but there's a feel about them. And maybe it's just kind of an 80s vibe that I got from this game that I really enjoyed.
So do you need to follow the music? Like, is it like a rhythm game?
Not in the sense that you're thinking of. I don't think it's
okay.
I mean, there is the path you're taking kind of moves to the beat to a degree, so that you're avoiding the objects. Like you'll have to take a left, and you'll take the left right at a downbeat, and then you'll take a right, and it'll be at another beat, and that kind of thing. But you're not kind of graded on for the most part on whether you're following the rhythm exactly. Although when there are fight scenes, you'll have these. It's a little more like a traditional rhythm game where there'll be kind of a shape that shrinks, and you have to kind of hit the jump button just as they match up with the shape. The shape shrinking into the other shape when the two things overlap perfectly. Hard to describe this visual thing, but you hit the button, and then you'll dodge the bullet or whatever it happens to be. But yeah, it's a little bit like a rhythm game, but not nearly as punishing or demanding as some of them.
Very nice. Personally, I've been obsessed with Grindstone. So Grindstone is a game from Cappy Games. They made very famously, they worked on Source and Sorcery and Below for Xbox One.
Oh, right.
So Grindstone is sort of like a puzzle game in that you need to slash enemies. So you control this very muscular character, and it's all drawn in a very cute and fun cartoon style. So you need to slash enemies, but you need to slash enemies of the same color. And so you draw a line with your finger to connect multiple enemies of the same color. And when you reach 10, so if you slash 10 enemies in a single move, you get a gemstone, you get a grindstone, hence the name of the game. And if you touch the stone, you can continue your combo, but you can change the color. So you can maybe slash 10 purple enemies, get the stone, then continue with 5 blue ones, and so forth. And so each level, you need to unlock, there's a set goal of a certain number of enemies that you need to kill, but you can also unlock other goals like open the treasure chest, and there's something else like kill the enemies that are wearing a crown. So as you go on with the levels, they become increasingly more challenging, and so the waves of enemies become more aggressive, and there's like specific enemies that you can only slash if you have previously killed in your combo another number of enemies. Like there's some bigger guys that you can only slash if your combo has reached at least 5 killed enemies. Okay. So it's really a puzzle game. It's basically a puzzle game disguised as a sort of like an slash hack and slash game, but it really and you can plan each move. Of course, it's not real time. So like any puzzle game, it's turn based, right. And you can plan your move in advance. You can design your route in the stage, and again, you do it all with one finger. You control your character. You draw the line, and you try to combine as many enemies together as possible in a single move. It's super fun. It's perfect for iPhone. It could have easily been a freemium game, which is sort of the feeling that I get from many Apple Arcade games. Like,
right.
This could have easily been a freemium game with gems and sacks of coins and all that kind of stuff and timers, but instead it can be played forever as part of a single Apple Arcade subscription. I get the same feeling with Sonic Racing and a bunch of other Apple Arcade games that were supposed to be premium games, but then Apple came in and say, hey, why don't you guys do an Apple Arcade game instead? And so they sort of removed all that freemium structure, but you can still see the foundation upon which the game was built. Grindstone sort of feels like that, but it works beautifully as an Apple Arcade game. It's very addicting, it's very fun, and it's very difficult once you reach level 10. So,
well, it's probably best that I haven't tried it yet if it's really addicting, because I've got a Catalina review to do. But one of the things when you mentioned puzzle games is that I think what I'm going to do with my arcade games is kind of separate them into a couple of different folders on my iPad, because
that's a good idea.
Because there are certain games that are definitely controller games and other games that are more puzzle-based control games that you use your fingers. And to that end, I mean, it's worth mentioning that not all of these games have controller support. I did run into a few last night when I was trying out some more games, realized that they don't support controllers at all. But there are puzzle games that have controller support too. It's just a matter of kind of checking them out and figuring out which ones do and don't. I'm going to go with another puzzle game, which is Spec, which is a very kind of high art looking game. It's all black and white, and it's these contours of three-dimensional objects with squares attached to them that move. And it's very hard to describe this, because what you're doing is with the controller or with your fingers is you're rotating the outlines of these three-dimensional intersecting objects in space, which, because all you're seeing is the very outside outline of the shapes, say it's two cubes, if you're looking at them straight on, they would be two squares. But as you rotate them, you're only seeing the outside edges, so it becomes a diamond, right? And you are controlling this square that just kind of moves along this outside edge, and you have to get your little guy to these other points to collect them. And that's, collecting those spots are what get, and they're specks, I guess. Those specks are what move you on to the next level. So it starts out relatively simple with simple shapes like cubes, but then it moves to things like cylinders and pyramids and cones, and maybe two different shapes, a cone and a cube, and you rotate them through space, and it creates really different looking shapes and outlines that sometimes intersect and sometimes don't. And the whole puzzle is to find your way around the outline to get to the specs and collect them. And it gets hard. Obviously, it gets much harder as you go along. There's new obstacles introduced, like things that bounce your little guy back off of a particular point. So you have to find another way around because you can't get through the obstacle and things like that. But it's one of those kind of puzzle games that I really like to relax to, because you could really get absorbed in it and forget about anything else that you may have been dealing with during the day. And I just found it really, really relaxing and fun to play. So definitely check that one out.
I like that word, relax.
I know. We could both use some
fun.
of that. All right. What do you got for me?
I want to mention, because I'm also obsessed with this game, Bleak Sword.
Oh, that one is so good.
Oh my God. It's so unique and so unlike anything I've ever played before.
Yeah.
So I don't even know how to describe it. So it's an adventure game that is entirely played with swipe and tap and hold gestures in portrait mode on the iPhone. And it's got this very unique art style, in that it's sort of the pixelated graphic style taken to the extreme, in that it's basically black and white, and you're controlling this little character that needs to kill enemies. There's a story about this bleak sword and an evil king that has been ruling this kingdom for centuries.
Right.
And you're supposed to take down the guy. But basically, it's got this very old, sort of like an Amiga game type of style. But it's also in 3D. Like you can see
Right,
like the
right.
3D perspective, and it's very unique. It's like an old game from the early 80s, but done in 3D on the iPhone in portrait, and you play it entirely by swiping across the screen. It is so unlike anything I've ever played on my iPhone before. It's almost ridiculous. Like, it's by far the most unique game. I keep coming back to that word, but it really is very different from anything else I've seen on Apple Arcade or the App Store in general.
Right, right, absolutely. I mean, it's a really neat game. It is unlike anything that I've ever played too. I haven't gotten very far into it, but you're immediately attacked by these like zombies and spiders and bats and all this stuff, and there's both swinging the sword and then there's dodging and kind of and then blocking, I guess. So those are the main gestures, aren't they, for the combat? And it's incredibly fun. I mean, it's a game that's very easy to get started in and also just get kind of lost in, I think, for a long time. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Direct Mail, an easy-to-use email marketing app designed exclusively for the Mac to help you create and send great-looking email newsletters. Email marketing is still an incredibly cost-effective way to reach your customers and grow your business. And for the past 15 years, Mac users around the world have trusted and relied on Direct Mail to handle all of their email marketing needs. It's designed just for the Mac, which means it's fast, easy to use, and works great with other apps and services. With Direct Mail, you can grow your email list by creating email sign-up forms that you can put on your website or Facebook page. And you can save time by integrating with over 1,000 other apps and services on the Mac and the web. You can even have email campaigns sent automatically without lifting a finger, and so much more. On top of that, they've got real humans available for customer support that you can chat with and get answers to your questions. It's fantastic. And Direct Mail is the #1 top-rated email marketing app for the Mac with 5-star reviews on the Mac App Store, GetApp, and elsewhere. The app is trusted by small businesses, nonprofits, schools, and Fortune 500 companies alike. And it's free to download to get started. Listeners of this show can save 10% on all full-feature pricing plans. All you need to do is head on over to directmailmac.com/appstories to check it out. Again, that URL is directmailmac.com/appstories to get 10% off when you opt for a full feature plan. Our thanks to Direct Mail for their support of App Stories.
All right, so I guess you haven't played Oceanhorn 2?
No, I haven't. Have you
Not
tried
yet.
that one?
Me
No.
neither.
Yeah, I played a little Skate City last night, and I like that game a lot. It's the one that, it's been published by Snowman, who did the Altos series, and this game is just gorgeous. I mean, the artwork is fantastic. There's a great soundtrack to it, and it's just very easy to play on and get the hang of on the iPad. I used a controller, and you basically use the two thumbsticks to execute tricks, and then the buttons to do things like jump and grind and that sort of thing. I didn't play it a lot. I did part of the Los Angeles level, and it was just neat because I was in LA over the summer, and it reminded me of being there because I think the artwork is just really well done, and it gives you a real sense of place as you're learning how to, you're learning the ropes of how to do the control the skateboard. And it has a nice little tutorial at the beginning, makes it easy to kind of figure out what you can do with each of the controls. But yeah, I would highly recommend trying that one as well.
I'm trying to think of the other games that I've tried. So I've been playing some, so let me go to my page, Agent Intercept, which is a racing game. And again, it's one of those games that I guess it really was supposed to be a freemium game. It's a very simple 3D racing game in the style of Asphalt Legends and, those kinds of games. Very beautiful graphics, very obviously meant to be free with in-app purchases, but it doesn't have them on Apple Arcade, and it looks great. It's fun, it's simple. You control a car, you're supposed to chase down these spy guys. The story doesn't really matter with these games. It looks pretty, it's fun, it's got some music going on, and it really takes advantage of the graphics on modern iPhones and iPads. But it's one of those games where you can feel that the Apple Arcade structure was bolted on later. It was meant to be a freemium game, and then Apple swooped in and convinced them to do an Apple Arcade version instead. I can tell you that on my list to play right now, and maybe you played some of these games, John. So I want to play Sayonara Wild Hearts, which you mentioned,
Right.
Assemble with Care from us too. I want to play Oceanhorn 2 because it looks real lovely. And I want to play Where Cards Fall. And if I can, Rayman Mini and Neocab. Have you ever seen these games?
No.
Have you seen Neocab?
No, I'm not familiar with Neocab.
So Neocab is I think the pitch is you're the last human taxi driver in this post-apocalyptic society.
All right.
And this game was sort of built as like this veiled criticism of Silicon Valley and modern.
All right.
What do you call it? Gig economy?
Yeah, the gig economy, with Uber and Lyft and all that.
Right. And it's sort of in that style. And I've seen a bunch of people in my gaming timeline on Twitter talk about this game. And I'm super curious. It's got this very neon graphic style. It looks really good. But yeah, there's a lot of games to play. And I guess my question for you before we wrap up the episode would be, how do you think Apple should balance all of these releases? Because the launch of Apple Arcade is an exception, right? It's the big launch.
Right,
you got to have a lot of games. You got to have them all at once. And it's a little too much right now. Like you got Oceanhorn, you got this Neocab, you got Shinsekai, you got Blitzsword, you got Various Daylife, which is the role-playing game from the makers of Bravely Default. You got Sayonara. You got a lot of games that require, not 30 minutes to finish. And you got them all at once. So it can be a little too much right now, but I understand why they did it, because they needed to make an impact. But going forward, is there anything that you would like to see from Apple in terms of staggering these releases or the design of the Apple Arcade main page? What do you think they should do?
I would like to see them do releases on a schedule and do it, maybe monthly, because the games that we've mentioned already and that are the other ones that we haven't even, these are deep games. There's a lot of time that can be put into these games. And I know you and I are still feeling like we've just barely scratched the surface with most of the ones that we've tried, because you try one, you play it for a half hour, an hour, and you're like, oh, but I want to try this other one. And there's just too many things pulling at your attention. And I agree with you. I understand that Apple wanted to make a big impact and a big splash and have something there for everybody on day one. But going forward, I'd really like to see some sort of, everybody knows that on the first Tuesday of every month, Apple's going to release, I don't know how many for the month, maybe 6 games for the month, and that they're going to have a video that they put on YouTube that you can go and see either, something a lot like a Nintendo Direct, or even just release a bunch of trailers with some commentary around it. I don't know, but something that gets people excited for and makes it something of an event on a regular basis, that what's coming, and you can then say, oh, all right, there's 6 new games, and there's of these 6, there's probably 2 or 3 that interest me. And so I've got 2 or 3 really good games to kind of occupy me for the rest of the month. And maybe 6 is the wrong number, but it's definitely shouldn't be 50 a month. This launch. And I know there's probably some pressure, given that the initial promise was 100 plus, to get to 100 at some point in the near future. But I hope they just kind of take a deep breath at that point and start releasing them at a more regular and slower pace, so that each one of them gets a little bit more attention, and then go back and also use the editorial process that they've used on the Today tab, for instance, to start highlighting some of these games. What are the games about? Who are the people behind them? The stuff that the editorial team at the App Store is really good at, so that people have a way to discover new things without having to kind of scroll through a list of 100 games and decide from, a small thumbnail or a short video that they watch. I'd really like to see that happen. Yeah, I've got so many more on my list too, Federico. My playlist includes Where Cards Fall as well. I have played it a little bit, but again, I've only scratched the surface, and it's not a controller-based game. So that's one of the reasons I want to split these up. I want to have games that maybe I play on my phone or my iPad mini that maybe I play a little bit before I go to bed or something like that, and then have some of these more controller-based games that I keep on my big iPad Pro that I can play with the controller when I'm sitting at a table or something. Plus, we didn't even mention, these games are now available on Apple TV too. And the lists there's not complete overlap, but it's very close. There's a very large collection of over 50, 60-ish games on the Apple TV too. And I only tried it for like 5 minutes because that, as of the time we recorded this, that update just came out and I haven't had time to really play those games, but they're there and they're worth taking a look at because I think a lot of these would benefit from a really big screen. The other games I want to play are Card of Darkness, which is the Zach Gage game.
Yeah.
Oceanhorn, like you, and also Assemble with Care. Those are kind of all on my hit list right immediately. And from there, I'm just going to explore some of these other ones you mentioned as well. I think that's good for today, Federico. That's a lot of games. I hope everybody's enjoying Apple Arcade. I'll be interested to see, too, what happens when Catalina comes out and some of these are available on the Mac. The Mac's not particularly known as a good gaming platform, but who knows? Maybe some of these will work particularly well on the Mac as well. I want to thank our 3 sponsors again for this episode. That's Pingdom, Zapier, and DirectMail. And of course, you can find me and Federico over at MacStories.net and Club MacStories. Federico is on Twitter and Instagram. He's at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.